I'd like to welcome Mr. Waldron, and he'll introduce the other panel members.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I'd like to invite the other panelists to come up and join me on the stage if you're ready. It's like I can't see. It's Chris Seaton from Bayer, Simon Hardis from ASTRAZENECA, and Jim Hattersley from Sun Pharmaceuticals. I think that was a tremendous introduction for us today to some really compelling insights on drug delivery and how this is so critical to what we do every day. As an IP attorney, I see a very critical aspect of drug delivery in the longevity of our products. Unfortunately, in this day and age, and notwithstanding the occasional victories that were just described, we live in an environment where IP on things other than the active ingredient are seen as evergreening or seen as secondary patents that are of lesser importance to the development of the pharmaceutical and somehow impede access to medicines. I think you'd all understand that without adequate drug delivery devices and mechanisms, a compound is next to useless if you can't get it to the patient or to the site or the target where it needs to go. These are very important stories that are interesting to hear because I have to argue every day in Washington and Geneva about why it is important to have intellectual property protection over drug delivery devices and drug delivery mechanisms, and why they are so important. So these stories are very important to us, lest these things be seen as secondary. And now you have forces in India, Argentina, Philippines, and other countries that are adopting rules that would make a per se exclusion from patentability for some of these drug delivery devices. So I put that out there that like we are entering an era where there is hostility to IP on drug delivery devices, and I think it's up to all of us to be able to tell that story in a much more compelling way about why this part of the pipeline is so important for patients. I'd like to invite the audience to come up to the mics at any time if they have a question, because we're just going to have this as a more or less open format. I thought that rather than me reading the biographies of the individual panelists, I would ask each of the panelists to sort of talk about themselves a little bit and introduce themselves to the audience and talk about their roles and sort of tell us a little bit about a story or a development or a thing in your company that's represented a major innovation in the field or made a difference to patients. So I'll start with Simon to my left and ask you to introduce yourself.
Thanks so much. I'm on mic, I can hear myself, that's great. So it's great to be here. I've been with AstraZeneca for 20 years. I joined when it was ICI, and I was fortunate enough that the first project that I was thrown into on day one was Zoladex 3-month depot, which for those of you who know, that's a biodegradable implantable product that releases a peptide in a controlled manner for 3 months to stop the growth of prostate cancer. And 20 years ago, that was a big ask, really exciting. So I spent some very formative years in my earlier career working on that product, taking it through development, and something that was mentioned earlier. The formulation science is one thing, but you've got to manufacture these things in a robust manner. And I think manufacturability and knowing what you have to do around the key process parameters was a key learning to me. Then I was involved in other advanced drug delivery designs in pharmaceutical development for about 10 years. I then moved into the sort of the project leadership arena, working with the commercial guys and regulatory guys and getting a bigger feel of what we do in pharmaceutical R&D. And then 3 years ago, I moved into my current position, which is I'm responsible for working with all the discovery organisations in AZ, from lead generation, taking the compounds up to phase 1, maybe phase 2, and making sure that the discovery scientists not just produce a potent inhibitor of a kinase with exquisite IC50 values, but also building attributes that allow the compound to become a potential medicine. And as part of that, it could involve, at the very beginning, some advanced drug delivery in order to take that compound forward. So I think that the title of this section was, where does drug delivery fit in the pharmaceutical pipeline? Certainly for me, it's all the way through. And just my reflection in terms of the story, I said at the very beginning, 20 years ago, I worked on Zoladex. AstraZeneca had just announced its 2012 results, which weren't brilliant. But Zoladex, which is off patent, there's no formulation patent, still sells over $1 billion a year. And if, as an example of novel drug delivery being a real value to the company, Zoladex is certainly one of them. Thanks.
Thank you, Simon. Chris.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christopher Seaton. I'm with Bayer Healthcare. I've been with Bayer for the last 18 years. And actually, interestingly enough, for 7 years before that, I was with ICI. And I remember well when Zoladex was a gleam in our eyes at that time. Unlike Simon, I'm not a scientist. My background is primarily finance. I've worked in finance in a number of companies and countries over the years. I moved into business development with Bayer about 12 years ago because I found, even though I was the CFO for the North American pharmaceutical business, I was actually spending about half my time doing or undoing deals, including one to try to, actually, which we did license, a competitor to Zoladex, a thing called Viador. Well, we would like to think it was a competitor. It didn't do very well. But that was a drug delivery deal, essentially, with the then Alza Corporation. I'm responsible in Bayer Healthcare for a group called Negotiations. This applies across all the aspects of Bayer Healthcare. We have a big pharmaceuticals business, which is about 2/3 of the business, animal health, radiology and intervention, and consumer care business. And my small team handles all the major negotiations and deals that we have. We've done quite a few over the years. I won't bore you with any war stories at this point. Maybe they'll come out a little later. And on that, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I'm James Hattersley from Sun Pharmaceutical Industries, the parent organization. As you may know, there are a series of different divisions. Primarily, we focus in oncology, ophthalmology, CNS, and respiratory. My background is really about split half on the technical side. I've got a background in biochemistry and molecular biology. Before that, neurobiology. Coming out of graduate school at the University of California, I joined Alza on an internship. That internship turned into about a 3-year stay. And that 3-year stay taught me a lot about drug delivery, really when Ciba Geigy still owned about 10% of the company. And moved on from there, spent a lot of time at Abbott Laboratories, and got much more engaged into the licensing, corporate development, business development side of the industry. So when I look back at Sasha's slide, and I see Judah Falkman, some of the initial work that we did at Alza was actually indirectly involved with Judah Falkman and fibroblast growth factor for optic nerve regeneration. Very interesting work. Dr. Falkman has now passed away, but his legacy clearly lives on, and so does a lot of the initial work that he did. So it gave me a lot of interest in that part of the industry on the technical side. If you fast forward now, looking back 25 years, as I mentioned, about 10 to 12 of those years were spent on the technical, more recently on licensing and business development, whether it's corporate development, looking at corporate assets, or product acquisition. If it means anything when you look at Sun, you look at the Spark division of Sun, if I can just say real briefly, this was a division within Sun. I've been there for about 5 years now. And in 2007, early 2008, was about the time that Sun spun out all of its drug discovery, drug delivery, and specialty product development aspect of the company in what's called Spark, Sun Pharmaceutical Advanced Research Company. That was at one time called Sun Pharmaceutical Advanced Research Center. And so if you think about it and you look at the company, that company is a standalone company with the same capital structure that Sun has. You've got a large amount of work, say 550 people engaged, a large amount of work involved in the drug delivery technology, drug discovery, and specialty products. 240 of that employee base is scientists and graduate level scientists. The rest manufacturing, because we do a lot of our own clinical development through phase 2, and we do global manufacturing from sites, whether they're one of the 6 sites in North America, 3 sites in Europe, primarily commercial sites for marketing and distribution, but 11 sites in India where we do an awful lot of manufacturing for global. But if you look at that, that says an awful lot as we continue to develop in drug delivery for the commitment to drug delivery aspects of the industry. 550 people dedicated to just that, 250 people of that, or 240 people of that is the technical side, formulations development, and scientific staff.
Thanks a lot. Simon, maybe you could comment a little bit on what you do as a general strategy. It's like, how do you, what are your top priorities in selecting drug delivery platforms where you are?
Yeah, good question. So I think it's very much about what is the first experiment what you want to do. So it's the compound that you've got, where is it in the R&D development phase? So if it's earlier on, what's the first experiment that you want to do? And is it something that you need to increase the exposure for some reason, or do the physicochemical properties of the drug mean that you can do something simple and move it forward quickly? So there's a balance between speed versus using advanced delivery systems. But with that in mind, you've always got to have a line of sight, I think, to the final end product and what you want to do from a commercial perspective. So some of the strategic things we think about is, what is the drug going to be used for at the end of the day? So what's the TPP? What are we trying to do in terms of what's the patient experience in taking this particular medicine, and therefore can drug delivery help? So it might be simple as changing a twice-a-day tablet using a modified release formulation to create once a day. How will that help the patient in terms of the compliance? You need to think very clearly now about the value equation. So by going forward with a more advanced delivery system, which is going to be more expensive, what's the value add? And you've got to really quantify that. You can't just say, well, it's going to make patient compliance better. You've got to back that up with real data, and I think that's becoming more important as we go forward. And I think we look at this throughout the life cycle of the drug from, as I say, very early. We've just signed a deal with a company called Seaton for some gold nanoparticles. I think that press release was about a month ago. And this is preclinical, very early work. But we believe it's worth doing the experiment and seeing what happens and see if this type of system works, and then we can go forward. So the strategy is almost a moving beast, and it's what was said earlier. It may be on a case-by-case basis, but I think you've got to think very carefully about what you do, because once you move into an advanced drug delivery system, you can be tied into it, and it may be difficult to move back unless you've really thought about the reasons why you need it.
Do IP considerations come into the equation when you're looking at these opportunities?
Unfortunately, yes. And I say unfortunately because with drug delivery, so as a scientist in drug delivery, we can get ourselves tied down with IP. And I think there's 2 IP considerations. One, are we treading in somebody else's IP? That's obviously very important. And I think when you've got a line of sight to the commercial product going forward, and the ability to sell it, then you have to be aware of your own internal IP, or what the IP relationship may be with a third-party supplier, because a part of the delivery system you may be working in combination with another company. So all of that has to go into the mix.
James, do you have any comment on your strategic approaches and what priorities you have in selecting drug delivery platforms?
And yeah, our primary, when you take a look at the aspect of product development or even looking at drug delivery technology, our primary thoughts on strategy are differentiation and value addition to what's there in the marketplace today, or what's out there in the landscape, as opposed to what we have to offer. There's an awful lot about drug delivery that we can speak about, and we've all said a little bit of our background sitting up here, but going back 20, 25 years, you can see a lot of very interesting, a lot of novel approaches in drug delivery. The entire drug delivery model of drug delivery companies in various places around the globe has quite changed. And companies have brought that in-house, or some of the companies that have the capability to do these types of things are very interesting and very enabling. But at the end of the day, we've got to take a look at what's it going to mean for the product portfolio that we've got. What is different? You don't want to wind up in tier one. You don't want to wind up being priced just like a generic, because there's really nothing different except there's a different delivery system, and you've got no effect on adverse event profile. You've got no effect on efficacy. Likely, a lot of times you'll try to maintain efficacy unless you're looking at a different indication. You're looking at an efficacy in that new indication. But largely, when you look at changing certain things about a product and its product profile, you're going to be looking at how can you reduce the adverse event profile. So practicality, as Simon said, practicality, what does the patient want? What's the compliance picture going to look like? Some of that you can gain from some KOL research and some discussions on the physician side. As far as the pricing side and reimbursement, clearly you've got to be speaking with the payers as well.
Chris,
just, our perspective is perhaps a little more agnostic when it comes to drug delivery. I mean, the real question for us, as I think both my colleagues have alluded to, is value. Does it add value at the end of the day to the product? And value doesn't necessarily mean we get a higher price. It's a multidimensional thing. But if it doesn't add value, if it doesn't differentiate our product, if it doesn't give us something that is better than we would otherwise have or than that's out there, then it really doesn't do anything for us, and we're not going to go for it. So it's not about we're going to get a higher reimbursement or a higher price. It may be better patient outcomes, it may be compliance, it could be any combination of things, but fundamentally it's a value question. Does this delivery mechanism add value to the product? Does it differentiate us? Does it give us a position that we can use?
Well, when talking about value, it's like value to the company, or value to payers, or value to patients. It's like how do you balance all those issues? It's like it's a very complicated area, and I guess you have to predict the future. But like maybe you have some.
I would actually say that they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. There is absolutely no value to the company if there isn't a value to either our customers or the people who are paying for the drug, and the two are not often the same. And our customers, could be patients or could be physicians. But there has to be an external value for us to be able to derive the value ourselves. So I suppose there could be a difference if it was just a cost of goods issue or a cost issue, but I have yet to see an advanced drug delivery technology that costs less than the basic stuff. If it did, I don't think you folks would be here. So really, does it deliver a value to the patient? Does it deliver a value to the physician? Does it deliver a value to the system, whichever the system will be, the insurance companies, the reimbursers, the governments? It has to deliver one or all of those three for the company to derive meaningful value from it. And that is very much how we look at it. Every drug we look at, every deal we do, the question is, what does this do that something else doesn't do better?
And I think that refers to I keep saying it, the line of sight from where you are. So it's no good thinking that way when you've got your product about to launch. You've got to have thought about that way in advance, so you then can design your clinical programs to answer the questions, to demonstrate the value add that you're trying to get. And I think you can take that even further. I mean, there's lots of companies here this week looking at preclinical stage drug delivery models, and they're saying, it increases efficacy, it does this. Well, at the end of the day, you've still got to demonstrate it. So when I'm looking at new drug delivery systems in the preclinical phase, I'll always ask the same question: show me the data. Show me that it's doing that you say it's going to do. And I think that's really important, because then you know what you've got in your hands, and then you can start defining how you're going to take it forward.
Yeah, that's a very good point about demonstrating, all right? Because it's actually interesting. The first people I go to when we look at some true innovation, something that's different out there, especially on the drug delivery side, is not necessarily the technical people. I assume that they'll work out that issue. But if I look across the last 20 years in this industry, where are we spending a heck of a lot more money than we ever did? It's on health economics and outcomes research. We go to those people and say, does this benefit, which is being proposed by company X, is it going to be something that translates into value that we can use in the marketplace?
Well, now that we're living in a world where HTA or health technology assessments are being routinely done in drug portfolios, it's like, do you have examples where you've had some success in convincing regulators or payers that the value is there? I mean, I think we're seeing some negative reports. We hear about the negative things, but is there good news?
I think there is. I mean, I can't specifically refer to a drug delivery system where we've gotten benefits, with the regulators, but we've gone through many an assessment on many of our drugs where they look at the totality of the outcome and the cost of the system and the burden and come to the conclusion that, yes, this is worth doing. I mean, we went through this. The UK is kind of notorious for some of this. Mm-hmm. We've been through it up and down with Xarelto. We've been through it with Nexavar, our oncology drug. And it's interesting, it changes over time. Quite often they start out by saying, no, we won't pay for it. And then the rest of the world pays for it. And then they look again. And I think we'll see this. We will eventually see something like that here. I think it'll be not quite as draconian as nice.
No, I would agree. I think to add to what Chris said, and especially Simon a minute ago, one of the things you can take yourself through as an exercise pretty simply is, as far as where you want to see the benefit and what you want to design in a product. And you don't really think about this as much from the technical side as you do from the product development, portfolio development, and even marketing side is. And I would probably invite or engage the drug delivery side, since I lived in it and spent a lot of time in it, really liked it as a strong background in innovative development, is design what you want the package insert to look like. Design what you want it to look like and what you expect to accomplish at the end, and work backwards. That's something that's done normally, again, in portfolio development, but it may be new on the drug delivery side to be thinking about that. Work back and look what the clinical development is to get into that, what kind of endpoints you need to meet, and does it make sense for the drug delivery system you've got, from the pricing and the system that you've developed so far. And I think when you do something like that, you very quickly and very simply can get a broad stroke as to whether this makes sense for what you're trying to pursue or does it not.